Everyone pretends to be confused. It's the safest place in the modern world. It's the velvet coffin for a mind that fears consequence. Not knowing is the last acceptable excuse. Say it often enough, and even reality begins to back off. I don't know what I want. I'm just figuring things out. I need more time. These phrases are not questions, they're shields. But no one is confused, not really. Everyone knows what they are doing. Everyone knows what they're avoiding. The indecisive man knows exactly why he doesn't act. The passive woman knows precisely who she hopes will take responsibility for her instead. What people call uncertainty is merely hesitation in accepting the cost of what they already desire. It is weakness, dressed as humility. The lie of confusion is attractive because it feels soft. It sounds humble, intellectual, even sensitive, but its core is cowardice, a quiet refusal to take command over one's own direction. Every "I don't know" is a silent "I'm not willing to suffer for this," and no one wants to admit that out loud. This is the trap. Society rewards confusion. If you say you're lost, they give you time. If you say you're scared, they give you comfort. But if you say, "I know what I want, and I'm willing to do what it takes to get it," they give you silence. Or worse, opposition. Certainty is punished because it creates friction. A decisive human exposes the indecision of others. It demands definition. But confusion is safe. Confusion keeps you soft, apologetic, and in motion without direction. You can stay in it for years. You can build a personality around it. You can call it a journey, a phase, or healing. In reality, it's paralysis by design. Those who are finding themselves often just don't want to make an irreversible move, because they know once they act, the clock starts ticking. Results will be demanded. Responsibility will return. No one applauds clarity unless it serves the collective story. But the moment clarity means breaking from the herd, silence becomes your only companion. This is the uncomfortable truth. You do know. You've always known. You've known when a relationship was dead but you stayed. You've known when a job degraded you but you smiled. You've known when an opportunity demanded action but you stalled. And you didn't stall because you were confused. You stalled because you were weak. Confusion, in its purest form, is a luxury. Real confusion is rare. It comes when stakes are low or options are identical. But most choices in life are not a mystery. They are battles. And battles don't require clarity. They require courage. But modern people have confused clarity with comfort. They believe they'll act when it feels right, as if feelings were accurate compasses, as if comfort were proof of truth. They wait to be sure. They wait to be ready, and that wait becomes their way of life. Eventually, they are not waiting for clarity, they are waiting for permission. But permission never comes. Not from life, not from the world, not from within. This is the paradox of confusion. The more you indulge it, the deeper it roots. The more you speak it, the more you become it. And soon, what began as a temporary stall becomes an identity. And confused, burnt out, still figuring things out, still healing, still searching. But what if there is nothing to find? What if there is only to choose? This is the violence of decision. The moment you stop claiming confusion, you lose all protective camouflage. You can no longer hide behind complexity. You can no longer blame others. The moment you say, "I choose," you inherit the consequences. And most people would rather stay suspended in limbo than risk falling on solid ground. Because once you land, you can fail. Once you commit, you can lose. And worse, once you decide, there's no one left to blame but yourself. But indecision is not neutral. It has a cost. A drifting life does not float. It sinks. People think they're delaying the pain by staying confused. In reality, they're compounding it. The longer you pretend you don't know, the heavier your self-betrayal becomes. Time does not pause for the unsure and punishes them. So ask this: if you were forced to choose right now, if there were no more time to delay, what would you do? And why aren't you doing it? That answer is not confusion. That answer is truth. And truth, unlike confusion, demands sacrifice. The idea of confusion as an obstacle is fiction. It is not a fog that descends. It is a curtain deliberately drawn. People hide behind it, not because they cannot see, but because they refuse to confront what they already know. The entire language of not knowing is designed to obscure rather than reveal. Dissect the phrase, "I don't know what to do." It is never spoken at the peak of decision. It is spoken after the mind has already calculated the risks and rejected the consequences. It is hesitation rebranded as complexity. Every time someone utters those words, it is not the beginning of inquiry, it is the end of courage. There is a fundamental law of human behavior. People rarely do what is best. They do what is safest. Safety is not about avoiding harm. It is about avoiding shame, rejection, loss of control. The illusion of confusion serves this purpose. If one remains unsure, no one can blame them for failing. They were only exploring. They were just trying things out. But life is not a rehearsal. The stage is real, and so is the silence after you speak. Those who constantly claim to be confused are not seeking answers. They are buying time. Time not to think, but to be pitied. Time not to act, but to avoid consequence. In psychological terms, this is not a crisis of direction. It is a collapse of accountability. The modern world sustains this collapse. It feeds on indecision. An individual who lacks clarity is easier to influence. A man without firm values can be sold any identity. A woman unsure of her desires can be programmed to chase validation. An undecided mind is a ripe target for politics, for commerce, for religion, for relationships. When a person no longer believes in their own convictions, they must borrow others. This is how you build a society of obedient wanderers, not with violence, not with chains, but with narratives that reward inaction and confuse fragility with depth. There is no strength in saying, "I'm still finding myself." There is only prolonged adolescence. In history, the decisive have always defined the future, not the wise, not the kind. The decisive, because clarity alone doesn't move the world. Action does. The modern worship of endless self-analysis, this cult of the introspective, is not wisdom. It is paralysis disguised as intelligence. Socrates was not praised because he questioned himself endlessly. He was condemned for speaking truths that tore illusions apart. The myth that deep thinkers must always be uncertain is a poison. True thinkers burn through confusion with dangerous clarity, and then act. The so-called confused individual suffers from another disease, the addiction to options. Choices create the illusion of freedom, but freedom without limits breeds internal chaos. The more directions available, the less capable the mind becomes of selecting one. This is the paradox of choice and the coward's preferred weapon. By claiming to be confused, a person keeps all doors open, but doors that never close become walls. A path that is never chosen becomes a maze. At some point, the freedom to choose becomes the prison of never choosing. And this is where the suffering begins, not from lack of clarity, but from abundance of cowardice. The so-called search for meaning is often nothing more than a refusal to commit, because commitment means saying no to everything else. It means killing all alternate identities. It means betrayal of potential for the sake of one reality. And most modern people cannot bear that betrayal because they have been taught to worship potential more than execution. A person would rather live in the fantasy of who they could be than accept who they are not. This is why they remain confused, not because the answer is missing, but because they do not want to bury the infinite fantasies their answer would kill. Confusion in this sense is a defense mechanism, a shield against mourning the unrealized versions of themselves. But there is no greatness in multitudes of options. There is only erosion of focus, erosion of power, erosion of time. The human being who cannot choose is not deep. He is impotent, not in capability, but in will. Because in the end, the difference between the decisive and the confused is not intelligence, it is the willingness to pay. To choose is to sacrifice. To act is to lose something. And those who fear loss will forever remain in the waiting room of life. They will disguise their hesitation in sophisticated language. I'm in transition. I'm open to possibilities. I'm still processing. But under all of it lies the same truth: fear of consequence. Not of making the wrong choice, but of making a real one. Because when you choose, you reveal yourself. You expose your values. You create enemies. You create boundaries. You inherit responsibility. And most people would rather rot slowly in a comfortable ambiguity than accept that level of exposure. So they stay confused, not because they cannot move, but because they do not want to be seen. Because once you know what you want, you are expected to move toward it. And once you move, you are expected to endure the pain that comes with it. This is the dissection. Confusion is not the fog before the storm. It is the storm of avoidance. Then the longer one stays inside it, the more they convince themselves that stillness is wisdom. It isn't. It's surrender. The machinery behind the lie of confusion is elegant in its construction because it appears to serve the individual while it quietly dismantles them. It begins with a biological impulse. Human beings are wired not for truth, but for survival. And survival, in the modern context, no longer demands strength or violence. It demands adaptability, to conform, to blend, to be socially accepted. In this environment, decisiveness becomes dangerous. The person who declares a clear direction creates tension. They draw attention. They become a target. And so the brain, ever loyal to comfort, manufactures a safer narrative. I'm not sure yet. This hesitation is not rooted in ignorance. It is a strategic pause crafted by the limbic system to minimize risk. It buys social approval by feigning humility. A person who says, "I'm still exploring," receives encouragement. A person who says, "I know exactly what I want and I'm not compromising," receives resistance. Because clarity is confrontational, and society is allergic to confrontation. But this psychological evasion is only the first layer. The second is cultural engineering. The modern individual has been raised in a matrix of indulgent possibility. From childhood, they are told they can be anything, do anything, find themselves, reinvent themselves endlessly. This sounds empowering, but it is a carefully constructed trap. Because if someone can be anything, they are never allowed to be something. To become one thing means rejecting others. It means defining yourself against the infinite. And in a culture that worships inclusion, rejection is heresy. The refusal to be many things is now seen as violence against potential, against progress, against plurality. The result is an identity that expands horizontally, but never vertically. A person becomes wide but shallow. Many interests, no mastery. Many identities, no essence. Many connections, no loyalty. In such a landscape, confusion is not a flaw, it becomes a virtue. The confused person is praised for being open-minded, fluid, non-binary in thought. But the truth is more sinister. They are just hollow. A hollow person cannot break the system. They can only orbit it. Their indecision becomes the fuel of modern consumption. If you are confused about your values, you will buy someone else's. If you are unclear on your path, you will walk one that is marketed to you. The system has no need for individuals who know themselves. It needs reactors. It needs emotional volatility. It needs endless searchers who never arrive because they keep scrolling, buying, voting, validating. Confusion is profitable. Every layer of society depends on your disorientation. Educational systems reward memorization, not self-acknowledge. Media thrives on distraction, not reflection. Technology weaponizes your attention span, reducing your capacity to commit. Romantic culture now prizes ambiguity over loyalty, relationships that never define themselves, love without duty, sex without stakes. In such an ecosystem, clarity is a virus, and the immune system of culture attacks it ruthlessly. A person who dares to say, "I have chosen," becomes an enemy of the undecided collective. Does the decisive make the confused feel judged? Declare make the lost feel exposed. And nothing provokes hatred faster than silent conviction. There is also the mechanism of emotional preservation. The human psyche is structured to avoid irreversible suffering. Clarity, by its nature, is irreversible. Once you see what you want, you cannot unsee it. Once you know what you are capable of, failure becomes inexcusable. It is easier, then, to remain in the fog, because the fog forgives. It forgives mediocrity. It forgives betrayal of the self. It forgives the years wasted. Clarity does not. Clarity remembers. This is why the moment of recognition is so painful. When someone finally confronts what they truly want, who they truly are, they are not liberated. They are condemned, because every second spent running from that truth now returns like a sentence. The weight is not in the decision, it is in the delay. This explains why most people fear quiet, why they cannot sit alone, why they need background noise, constant interaction, the next task. Silence is dangerous because it removes the excuses. It brings you face to face with the raw architecture of your life and how you've built it to avoid decision. And yet, the entire machine, biology, culture, economy, psychology, all of it functions on one foundational lie: that not knowing is safe. But it is not. It is only safe for the system, not for you. The system thrives when you drift, because a drifting person can be steered, but a person with direction must be either killed or respected. This is why schools never teach decision-making, why no one teaches how to say no, why entire generations are raised without the skill of confrontation. Because to teach clarity is to manufacture rebels, and rebels cannot be sold back to themselves. So the machine keeps you confused. It rewards you for doubting. It appraises your hesitation, feeds you distraction. It convinces you that confusion is a phase, a rite of passage, a sacred struggle. But it is none of these things. It is the leash. The question is not, why are you confused? The real question is, who benefits from your confusion? Because it certainly isn't you. There is no peace in clarity. It strips away comfort like acid on flesh. It isolates, it severs. Once confusion is gone and choice has been made, a person is forced to confront what they were trying to avoid all along. The finality of their own will. The luxury of not knowing is gone. The noise dies, and what remains is a silence that no longer protects, but judges. This is the consequence of seeing clearly. Solitude. Not the poetic solitude of a wanderer, not the romantic solitude of an artist, but the brutal exile of one who no longer belongs to the fog. The confused are welcomed by the herd. They are embraced, empathized with, reassured. But the clear are shunned. They are seen as arrogant, aggressive, threatening. Because to choose is to reject, and to reject is to commit a social crime. A man who says, "This is the life I want," exposes the indecision of everyone who watches him. He makes them feel inferior without speaking a word. They will call him rigid, toxic, delusional, extremist, not because he is any of these things, but because he reflects what they refuse to confront. Certainty is a mirror, and most people hate their own reflection. Worse still, clarity demands action, and action exposes limitation. The moment one says, "I will do this," every movement is measured, every failure is owned. There are no more excuses. There is no more shelter. A person who was once praised for being in the process is now condemned for not delivering results. That is the cruel irony. The world applauds your confusion because it expects nothing from it. But the moment you declare yourself, it begins its audit. And so the truth becomes a burden, not because it is complex, but because it is inescapable. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you decide, you cannot hide. You have become visible, and visibility attracts resistance. Clarity is lonely because it is rare. Most people operate on borrowed direction. They outsource their desires. They inherit values, mimic goals, recycle dreams. They are legible to the system, predictable, useful. But the one who chooses his own path, he becomes illegible. He cannot be placed into a demographic. He does not respond to algorithmic triggers. He cannot be controlled by guilt, shame, or fear of missing out. And so he is punished. The punishment is not always direct. Sometimes it is social distance. Sometimes it is economic consequence. Sometimes it is psychological. The quiet dread of being the only one who knows while the rest still sleep. There is a price for exiting confusion, and it is paid in full, with interest. But the cost is not just external. Internally, clarity creates fracture. It reveals the conflict between the life you live and the life you want. It exposes your cowardice not just once, but daily. Every small compromise becomes visible. Every distraction becomes a betrayal. You begin to see how many of your actions are designed to please, delay, or numb. It becomes impossible to lie to yourself. The old illusions no longer work. The praise of others sounds hollow. The comforts of routine feel suffocating. The goals you once chased appear artificial, staged, irrelevant. Clarity removes your ability to enjoy the anesthesia of ordinary life. You begin to notice how everything is engineered to keep you asleep, and how eagerly you once embraced it. The consequences deepen. You stop relating to others, their dramas feel manufactured. Their questions seem rehearsed. Their ambitions look like stage props. You sit at dinner tables and wonder how everyone else still believes. You watch people chase things they don't want, say things they don't mean, and seek approval from those they quietly resent. And you know, with dead certainty, that you can never go back. This is the exile of clarity. You belong nowhere. You become a stranger to your past self. You feel foreign in your own social circles. The friendships that were built on mutual hesitation begin to dissolve. You start to crave silence not as an escape, but as necessity. You realize that very few people can endure what you now carry, and fewer still can be trusted with it. Trust decays, not because others become worse, but because you have seen too much. You have seen the mechanics of their confusion. You understand why they act as they do. Their games no longer anger you, but they no longer interest you either. You watch people argue about surface-level choices, knowing they are only afraid of the deeper one. And beneath all of it, something else emerges. Not relief, not happiness, but clarity's final gift, responsibility. No more escape, no more blame, no more fantasy, only consequence. Every moment from now on is yours, your outcomes, your failures, your movement or stagnation. The throne and the guillotine are now both yours to carry. This is why most people choose to remain confused. They sense the truth before they see it. They know, instinctively, that clarity is not freedom. It is obligation. It is weight. It is war without applause. To see is to suffer. To choose is to bleed. To act is to be alone. And yet, there is no going back. Once the lie collapses, the fog will never return. You can mimic the confused. You can speak their language, but you will never again belong to their world. You will carry the truth like a scar beneath your skin. You will walk into every room knowing what others refuse to name, and that knowledge will cost you everything you once thought you needed. There is no recovery from truth, only realignment. Once the illusion of confusion has been dismembered, what remains is not a surge of power, but the hard surface of clarity under your feet. No more softness, no more cushion, just the weight of reality pressing against every step. The air is thinner here, the silence is louder, and there is no hand to hold. The decisive man does not become heroic, he becomes dangerous. Not because he seeks conflict, but because he no longer bends. The game is over. He sees the moves for what they are. Approval is irrelevant. Understanding is unnecessary. Harmony is not the goal. When a person no longer needs to explain themselves, they move differently. Not faster, but with precision. They choose not to speak when silence will do. They no longer seek to convince, convert, or entertain. Their energy is no longer scattered. They are not waiting for confirmation. They are not seeking signs. They are not asking permission. The map is gone. The compass is internal. This is the strategic state. It does not look like aggression. It looks like distance. The one who has exited confusion begins to speak less, observe more, cut deeper. They develop a preference for solitude, not out of bitterness, but because most conversation is noise. They stop giving their attention to people who are still performing confusion as a lifestyle, and they develop a new discipline, selective clarity. Not every truth must be spoken, not every decision must be announced. Once the lie of confusion is gone, the intelligent move is to weaponize silence. Let others assume you are still undecided. Let them underestimate. Let them talk while you act. Let them swim in options while you collapse the field. This is the cruelty of clarity. It teaches not only what to do, but when to disappear. The strategic mind does not broadcast intention. It does not dramatize struggle. It moves beneath the surface, without applause, without need for affirmation. The clear man is not loud. He is inevitable. But inevitability is earned. It is not the reward of passion. It is the consequence of exact thinking and unsentimental self-awareness. Clarity makes a man sharp, but not fast. Focused, but not reactive. It slows him down, not out of hesitation, but out of calculation. He learns to delay response. He learns the value of restraint. He no longer needs to act instantly because he knows where he is going. And that knowledge gives him time. Time is power. And so confusion becomes a foreign language. The once familiar fog now looks like a trap others walk into with open eyes. You do not save them. You do not warn them. That's not your role. They have chosen comfort. You have chosen consequence. There is no middle ground. This is the final death of sentimentality. You stop trying to pull others out. You start building without them. Strategic clarity is not evangelism, it is separation. The battlefield is not external, it is internal. You are not trying to conquer others, you are trying to remain immune to the seduction of doubt. Every system around you will still try to pull you back, with praise, with distraction, with temptation, with appeals to compassion. But the only victory is endurance. You do not go back into the fog. You stay outside, even when the cold sets in, because you now know what it costs to leave and what it would cost to return. This is not a motivational ending. There is nothing beautiful here. There is no promise of reward. There is no utopia waiting at the other side of clarity. There is only what is, and that is enough. Clarity does not solve life. It simply aligns it. You still lose. You still fail. You still bleed. But now, it's yours. Your losses. Your victories. Your direction. There is no more hiding. No more stalling. No more asking the world to understand. Because the moment you stopped pretending to be confused, You gave up the right to be misunderstood. That is the final trade. You lose the crowd. You gain yourself. You lose the warmth of shared weakness. You gain the fire of private conviction. You lose the comfort of being seen as someone who is still becoming. You gain the cost of being someone who already is. This is the edge of power. To be alone, to be clear, to be quiet, and to never ever apologize for it. Let them drift. Let them stall. Let them say they don't know. But you do. And that is the difference. Sit with it. No movement. No hope. Just the sharp silence of clarity. The performance is over. The choice was made. Now walk. Alone if you must, but never backwards.